Hi, it's Alison Smith here again, and welcome back to video 2 of the Salon Profit Formula. First of all, just want to say thank you very much for coming back and watching the second movie, and secondly, for all the great comments and likes that you gave it on the YouTube channel and also through Facebook and everything else. Really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Pleased you really enjoyed it. Now, this video is going to be very different. There's no wonderful pictures of me wandering around with the ducks and the lakes and so on, and the waterfall in the background. No, today we're going to work. You see, I think with these 5 steps, we're answering so many of the issues. They've always been there. I've been teaching them for years. The difference here is that I've sat down and spent a long time narrowing it all down into this 5-step formula. Remember, where does my content come from? It comes from over the last 30 years sitting down with salons just like you intimately. You know, it's no good paying me to come in as a business coach and then telling me lies. I see the truth. I see everything. And you know what? I start to see very clearly common factors. The things that people are doing well that is making them a profitable business, and the things that people aren't. And over the years I've learnt that, I've developed it and delivered it in programs all around the world to over 100,000 hairdressers. And now I've turned it into the Salon Profit Formula. Tighter than it's ever been, and most importantly, simpler than it's ever been. It works. Finally, before we move on, let's remind ourselves of why we're doing this. I asked you a question. Do you remember? I said, why did you start your business in the first place? And I told you that the answer most people give me is financial independence and freedom. Do you remember what I asked then? How's that going for you? You see, that's why we're here. We all work so hard with our businesses. We put so much effort and energy in. And over the years, things like minimum wage, increased costs, and obviously the recession, etc., has affected our opportunity to actually get some results out of all that hard work. Well, I think it's time for that to change. Seriously, let's knock that on the head and move forward. Let's start making serious profit again out of our businesses. That's why we're here. That's why you're watching this now. Okay, let's get to it. In this lesson, we're going to start looking not just at how much you want, but how you're going to get it and how you need to focus yourself to achieve it. All right, you don't have to look at my ugly mug anymore, because we're now going to move into the online lesson part of this video. I'll see you on the other side. Okay, here we go. Let's just remind ourselves of the 5 steps of the Salon Profit Formula. Number 1, we've talked about that already. How much do you want? Number 2, what has to change to get what you want? Number 3, how do you measure and what should you be measuring to make sure you're focused and consistent? Number 4, how do we get the team focused on what we want to achieve? And then number 5, we've got to make it happen. It's all very well having all those numbers written on a piece of paper, but ultimately we still have to make it happen. It's all about focus. I know I've talked about this before, but this is so important I need to recap on it. Where you put your focus is where you get your results. It's one of my guiding principles. It's worked for me so many times, I know it has for you too. If you accept this principle, you have to accept the flip side of the coin. And that is, if you put your focus in the wrong place, you'll get the wrong results. And that's happening all the time. When we're just focused on sales or break even, that's what we're getting. But we've got to focus on profit, because that's what's going to give us the things we want, the success we want. That's the key. Now, we've got to pick a number, because that's where you start. Now, you may know what that number is. You may know exactly how much profit you need. But if you don't, just pick a number. Stick it into the calculator and you'll find out whether it's right or wrong. You'll find out whether it's feasible. And then finally, you've got to know why. Why is the drive. It's what's going to make sure you persevere and you have the discipline to keep going when it gets tough. Now, I always say that profit should be providing 2 things for you: what you want and what you need. You need to think about both of those when you're thinking about why you want the profit. You see, want is what you want for the salon owner. Now, I always used to joke that salon owners used to drive and wear their profit. Well, that's the want part. And if you're just doing that, well, clearly that's not going to work. However, the need, that's the reinvestment in the business. That's when you start investing money in better products, in great marketing, in education, in a nicer salon, etc. Now, when you start doing that, but you aren't actually getting anything yourself out of it, that's just as bad. In other words, if you're only doing one of these two, then it doesn't work. If you're just taking the money for you, you're not reinvesting in the business. If you're just reinvesting in the business and you're not getting anything out of it, then the demotivation kicks in and then all hell lets loose because you are the leader. And if you're demotivated, then nobody else is going to be. So the first step, quite straightforward in deciding what we want. But of course, it's as step one becomes into step two that the action really happens, because that's when we start looking at what has to change. So let's say, for example, that you've already decided how much profit you want. And if not, you're just going to pluck a number out of thin air. All right, you know why you want it. You know what you want it to do for you. You know what you need it to do for the business. Now we've got to start looking at what's got to change in order to achieve it. And that's really what we're going to be very focused on in this lesson. Well, the first question is, how much do you have to take to make what you want? Those are the key words. The amount of times people talk about take, but they mean make. No, take is what goes in a till. Make is what's left. Remember, it's the golden rule of money. It's the golden rule of business. More has to come in than goes out. As long as you operate that way, you can't go too far wrong. Now, this is where we're going to play the what-if game. I love this. So let's say that we've worked out now that we need to take X amount, £1,000, dollars, euros, whatever, a year to make the profit I want. And remember, we're not talking about a percentage, we're talking about an actual number, an amount of money. All right, we know what that is now. And that's going to break down. Now, when you play the what-if game, you start changing things. You say, what if I did more clients? What if I increased my average bill? What if I had more stylists? What if I opened extra hours, etc.? The what if game is how you start to make the changes you need to make. It's a great story from Gordon Ramsay. I love this. Gordon Ramsay was talking to a lady who runs a restaurant, and he asked her if she could make a cake. And she said, of course I can. And so what he did was he let her make the cake. She whisked it up and he said, is that going to make a nice cake? She said, yeah, it's going to be very nice. He then mixed up another formula similar to hers, using the exact same ingredients but completely different measurements, all the wrong measurements. He whisked it up. What sort of cake is that going to make? He said. Horrible, she said. He said, yeah, that's your business. You've got all the right ingredients, you just don't have the right mix. That's what the what if game is all about, finding the right mix. And then the salon drivers. Now, we're not going to talk about those in detail here today. They're going to be very much in the next video. But the salon drivers are the key to it all. Because once you know what I've got to take to make what I want, well, the salon drivers actually make up what you take. They're called the salon drivers because they literally drive the salon forward. Let's start with how much do I need to take to make what I want. Now I'm going to introduce you to something here called the one piece of paper. It's called the one piece of paper, first of all, because I have a passion for one piece of paper. I love it when I can get things on. I love simplicity, so I want to get things onto one piece of paper. However, to make the one piece of paper work, there are 3 numbers you have to know. Now, you've got to go and find these numbers if you don't know them. Your bookkeeper, your accountant, take them from last year's accounts if necessary, but to be fair, the more current they are, the better. As a minimum, these numbers need to be for 3 months, because anything less than that, it's too variable. You can have a good week, you can have a good month, you can have a bad one. 3 months is a fairly good spread. 6 to 9 months to a year, obviously even better. Unless things have changed dramatically in your business in the last few months, then keep it as current as possible. You need to know your wage bill. You need to know your stock bill, and you need to know what all the other costs are, and I mean all the other costs. That's everything. So in other words, when we take everything that you've put in other costs, we add it to everything you've spent on stock, we add it to your wages, that's everything that's going out of your business. Now, when you work on the one piece of paper, we're going to be looking at services. Now, let's just look at the difference between services and retail for a moment. From a financial management perspective, you shouldn't be looking at retail and services together. You should separate them out and have them as two separate parts of your business. There are two reasons why I think you should do this. Number one, the percentages and figures are completely different. So when you start measuring your business with them both together, it really skews the figures. All right, the second thing is that when you separate retail out from services, it gives you an opportunity to actually find out how profitable it is and whether it's working for you. Because too often it just gets lost in all the numbers. So let's just be clear, make sure everybody understands this. Everything we're talking about here is about services. Retail is something completely separate. Okay, here's a couple of benchmarks for you from the industry. I do have to say these are based on UK numbers and UK figures. I tend to find they're fairly similar around the world, but of course it does depend on legislation, tax and so on and other things. But even if they are different in your country, I know that they will still be taking up the majority of your overheads and your costs. Wages, normally somewhere between the 48 and 52% mark. And then stock, remember, service stock, this is particularly where, of course, if you include retail, it all gets a bit skew-if, between 8 and 12%. That depends on the deal you get from your product company, it depends on how efficient you are with your stock ordering, etc. So let's say, for example, a salon had a 50% wage bill and they had a 10% stock bill. What that means is they've then got a gross profit of 40%. Now, this is the key. That 40% is what's left to pay all your bills. So, for example, I always joke and say if you were doing hair on a beach, you paid the wages, you had some stock, you'd make 40% profit. But you're not on a beach. And so that 40% has got to pay all of the bills and generate your net profit. Now perhaps you're starting to see why those wages and stock figures are so critical, and also why so many people are struggling to make the profit they should be. So what's the one piece of paper about? Well, it's very simple. It starts with a very simple calculation. If you've got a calculator with you, it helps for this next little bit. The first part is the formula. This formula works whatever the numbers are. It's the same formula. It makes no difference. You take your total costs, you then divide them by the gross profit figure, as in, if you're putting it into a calculator, you don't press the percentage button, you just put, in this case, 40, times by 100. So for example, it would work like this. Let's say we had a total cost figure of 60,000 in this business. And like we just showed you, 50% wages, 10% stock, that leaves me 40% gross profit. And then I'm going to divide that by 100. So if you've got the calculator, do that, 60,000 divided by 40 times 100, and you should get 150,000. All right, simple as that. What it's told you there is that to break even on that business, you'd have to take 150,000. Now, our profit at the moment is 0, so that's our break even. We don't want to focus on break even, but you need to know what it is. Particularly, by the way, this is a great tool when you're thinking of opening a new salon. All right, however, we just agreed this is all about profit, not break even. Now, here's my little sneaky trick. If you now put the profit into your total costs, like I said on the first video, write up a bill for your profit. It's a fake one, remember, but just write a bill. It's a game you're playing with yourself. So let's say in this business we want, say, 20,000 profit. Well, what that means is now my total costs aren't 60,000. I've got a bill for 20,000 payable to me. So now my fixed costs are 80,000. You now just do the sum again. 80,000 divided by 40 times 100, and you now have to take 200,000. So what the one piece of paper formula has done here is shown you exactly how much money you need to take, 200,000, to make 20,000. Simple. That's how it works. So you've now got an annual target, or focus as I like to call it. But this is where it gets fun. Because now you've got that, you can drill it down, turn it into a weekly target, both for yourself and per stylist. All your stylist targets should add up to what you need to take per week. You can now break it down even further into an hourly target. In other words, how much do I need to be taking per hour to make the profit I want? Now, there's a way to do this to make this really viable. I'm going to show you that a little bit later. But once you've got that number, you drill it down again, because now you've got that number, you can start to look at your pricing. Are you charging the right amount per appointment time? Maybe your appointment times need to change. Maybe you want to go from a 45-minute appointment up to an hour, but you don't know what to charge. This will tell you. Maybe you want to go the other way and reduce your appointment time slightly. It's quite interesting that we went from a 30-minute appointment in this industry up to a 45-minute appointment. And the reason why it was a 15-minute jump was because it was before computers and the appointment pages had 15-minute slots. And it was the only thing we could do. You see, I think if we'd have had computers when we made that decision, we might have gone from a 30-minute appointment up to a 40-minute appointment, for example. I know a lot of salons that do that. Or you're a 45-minute appointment and you're thinking, can we really go up to an hour? We want to increase our appointment time to give better service, but an hour? Well, you don't have to go to an hour. What if you just went up to 50 minutes? You can play with this now. Equally, you can start to look at your staffing levels. Can I achieve my target, my focus, with the amount of staff I have, with the amount of stylists I have? Do I need more stylists? Or what if a stylist leaves me, or I'm thinking maybe of getting rid of someone? How much impact is that going to have? You can work all that out with these numbers. And then finally, maybe you need extra staff, but you haven't got any space. Well, maybe if you open extra hours, it gives you more space. A Sunday and a couple of late nights, all of a sudden, there's enough space for another stylist in the salon. Sometimes people say to me, Alan, should I open Sundays? I say, I don't know. It depends on your business. It depends on your goals. It depends on what you need to achieve. I don't know, but the numbers will know. They'll tell you. All right, now I mentioned the what if game. What you now do, now you've got that number, is you actually start to make adjustments until the target, your focus, is feasible. Now, let's look at that word. It says feasible, not achievable. People set achievable goals, achievable targets. Well, achievable to me means easy. And easy quite often means not achieving what you want. So it might be achievable, but it's not achieving what you want. I like the word feasible. In other words, it might be a crazy goal. It might be a crazy target. I might be looking to double my business. But by using the one piece of paper and then playing the what if game, I can work out whether that's feasible. It may not feel achievable at the time, in which case you probably wouldn't set the goal in the first place. But if it's feasible, even if it's going to take you a couple of years, then go for it. Okay, I call the Salon Profit Formula free program the second best salon business program you can do. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, quite simply, my intention on this program was to make sure that it was really great content, that it was content that was viable to you, that you could use, that could make a difference, and that whoever is engaging with it. You see, I'm passionate about this industry, as I've told you before, and I want it to change, I want it to grow. And even if this is all you ever do with us, hopefully you'll remember that perhaps the Fantastic Hairdresser and the work that we do here helped you. However, obviously we have other programs that we run as a business that people buy into. And there's one thing that actually makes the best salon business program the best. And it's actually what I call the calculators. You see, the reason why we're online with this now is because I've created some online calculators. And these calculators make all of this so simple. Let me tell you a bit about them. The first one is the Salon Focus Calculator. I'm going to show you this in a moment and how it works. Effectively, it's the one piece of paper, but in a simple calculator format. The second one is the Salon Drivers Calculator. So now what we can do is we can take everything that we found out in Salon Focus and look at what needs to change in our salon drivers to achieve it. And now we've got a strategy and a way of working and measuring your team and your business. And while we're talking about measuring, some of you will have heard about the perfect client, something I created a few years ago. It was a way to motivate stylists and hairdressers to achieve the things we need them to achieve. Now, I've now created a calculator that you can use with your stylists to identify what they need to change to get the results we all want. Okay, so let's have a closer look at the first one. Okay, here we are with the Salon Focus Calculator. I've already told you how to work this out using the formula I gave you earlier. However, when we start using the calculator, it's so much easier and a lot more fun, particularly when we get to what I call the what if process, when you start changing things around to see what would happen to my target if I did this. Let me show you how it works. It's really simple. Okay, now I've already told you there are three numbers you have to know. The first is your wage percentage. Now that's a percentage of your net sales. Your bookkeeper or accountant, whatever, should be able to give you this if you don't have it. However, do remember, the salon owner's salary must be in here too. If you work behind the chair, you are contributing to the sales. Now, if you're working, say, half the week or 3 days of the week behind the chair and 2 days of the week running the business, then 2/5 of your salary, if it's 2 days a week, goes into a fixed cost, into the normal costs, whereas 3 days, 3/5 goes into the wage percentage, because you are generating income. In fact, in many cases, a lot of income. So it's got to be considered. Otherwise, all the numbers go all over the place. People say to me, Alan, well, my wages are about 30%, 32%. I know straight away your wage isn't in there in that case. Now, remember tax and national insurance, all those other things, that's all going to be in here. All right, so that's your total wage percentage. Let's say in this salon, it's currently 54%. Now we come down and we start to look at your stock percentage. Once again, remember, it's your services stock percentage. Retail should be dealt with as a separate part of your business. It's got completely different numbers, completely different percentages, and makes this all go crazy. So we're just looking at your services at the moment. Now that of course means your retail sales aren't in here either. So all of this is just services. And we're going to say that this salon has a 14% stock percentage of their net sales. That's told us straight away that we have a 32% gross profit now. Now do you remember? That's got to pay for everything else. 32%. So as I always say, if you were on a beach cutting hair, you've paid the wages, you've got the stock, you've made 32% profit. But you're not on a beach, you're in a salon, which means you've got to use that 32% to pay all the bills and still make yourself some profit out of it. That's 32 pence or 32 cents of every pound, dollar or euro. That's all that's left. Okay, now let's have a look. We're going to put in your total other costs. That's everything else. This is your annual cost, right the way down to magazines and coffee if necessary. So let's say in this business it's I don't know, 107,000. And for the moment, let's not put anything in required profit, because what you'll see is what the break even is, because we're not asking for a profit. And of course, that's one of the first numbers you should know is what's your break even. Don't focus on it, but of course you need to know it. So if we had 107,000, it says down here in the orange box, total costs, including required profit, which is 0, is 107,000. So let's come up here, and there you go. There's the break even for this business. 334,375. Remember, it makes no difference whether it's pounds, euros or dollars. It's exactly the same. However, we don't want to break even, so let's come back up here, and now let's put the profit in. Now, we've been talking about the number 50,000. Let's put 50,000 in. And remember, the great thing about this calculator is if you really don't know, as I've almost been saying to you, just grab a number out of the air and put it in. This will tell you whether it's viable or not, whether you'll be able to achieve it. All right, so let's put 50,000 in for now. Now, what does that tell us? It now changed it to 490,625 is what we've got to do to make that 50,000 profit. Now, you may have forgotten, I just want to show you, because if I take this back to 0, just remind yourself of what the break even is. Wow, 335,000, let's call it. But when we put the 50,000 in, it goes back up to 490. That's 155,000 increase. 3 grand a week to make £1 grand a week. That's the issue in this industry. You see, if you didn't know that you've got to grow your business by 150,000 to make a 50,000 profit, then your focus will be in completely the wrong place. This is why focus is so critical. But if you're focused in the wrong place, you get the wrong results. Now, I'm not saying it's as easy as this, but at least we've got a chance now if we know that we're trying to achieve 490. Because we now know where we're going, we can work out what we've got to do to get there. But as I always say, if you don't know where you're going, how on earth can you work out how to get there? Now we know. All right, let's take that number and let's carry on. The first thing I want to do is add some sales tax to this. You know, something I've worked out over years in this industry, banging square pegs into round holes is really hard. And we've been pushing lorries uphill sometimes in trying to get hairdressers and often salon owners to deal with net figures. Now, of course, that's the correct way to do it. Any accountant, bookkeeper will tell you. But you know what? Almost every hairdresser I know and most salon owners all still look at what's in the till. And that's gross. My guess is that most of you out there listening to this, when you look at your average bill, when someone says my average bill is this, that is a gross figure, not a net figure. Now, if you want to continue working in net, of course you can. You just leave that empty. But let's now put in, now we're in the UK, so let's put in 20%. And that's now given me a gross sales target, or focus as I like to call it. All right, let's carry on. Let's first of all turn that into a weekly figure. So now we've got a weekly target. My weekly target is 11,322. Let's carry on, because what we're going to do now is going to enter in how many stylists I've got. So I've got, let's say, 7 stylists. And now the calculator tells me an average weekly sales per stylist. Now, of course, this is an average. Some are going to do more, some are going to do less, but it gives me a benchmark to start to work to. Now we can really start to drill down, because now we've got that number. What if we now start to put the productive hours per stylist and work it down to an hourly appointment rate, which you can use to set prices? Now, the number I'm going to put in here may not make some sense at first, but let me enter it first. Now, that number is based on a 40-hour week. Let me just take you back a couple of steps. When the calculator divided the annual sales down to a weekly target, it did it by 52, because you're open 52 weeks of the year. However, that of course doesn't take into account holidays, sickness, etc. So what we're doing now is we're going to take account of that in the hours per week. Let me give you an understanding of what I mean. Let's pretend that a stylist didn't want their holiday entitlement and they just wanted to work less hours. In other words, spread their holiday entitlement over the year. That's what I'm doing here. So if we take holiday pay, bank holidays, and nominal sickness, that accounts for about 15% of the working year. So what if we now take 15% off the working week? So a 40-hour week becomes a 34-hour week. But what about the other 8 hours, 34 down to 26? What's that? Well, I've been in this industry a long time. There's not many salons I've seen where every single stylist is fully booked every single day of every single week throughout the year. So I know that even a busy salon is approximately losing about 8 hours worth of time. That's a day a week. 8 hours of time per stylist per week. That's breaks, that's clients not turning up, that's last minute cancellations, etc. Go and check it out in your own book if you like, but I guarantee that you'll find probably in many cases it's much more than 8 hours. Now, we're not just talking about your top stylists here. They may be fully booked most of the time, but what about the stylists that are only doing 20 clients a week? Over the whole team, that has a massive impact. Let's just be clear that 26 productive hours is still a busy salon. Let me put it a different way. It equates to a stylist doing 35 45-minute appointments a week, every week for the whole year. No holiday time, no sickness, every single week. That's still a busy stylist. But this is based on, in our case, all 7 stylists operating at that level. I believe that's about the maximum you could get to. So when you're working this, remember that 26 hours is not giving you any leeway. That's still a busy salon. That now gives us an hourly appointment rate of £62 an hour. So now I've got something I can work on. Let me show you how it works now. You see, now what we've got is the price calculator. If I just roll it up again, let's put in a 45-minute appointment. And it tells us that we need to be getting $46.50 per 45 minutes. So if that was a 45-minute cut and blow dry. Now, obviously, this is all going to depend on your pricing system, your market, where you're positioned, etc. But let's just say in this particular case, for this salon, that's a little bit high. It's not ridiculous, it's doable. But remember, this is an average cut and blow dry price. It's not just the top end. So if you've got a menu, a price menu, and you've got different levels, then $46.50 is in the middle. I think that's pushing it a little bit for this salon that I'm thinking of. I don't think they're going to do that. Bearing in mind, we're saying that it's every single stylist fully booked for the whole year. I think we're pushing it a little bit there. So what this is telling me straight away, it's giving me a benchmark that says, I'm not sure this is 100% viable. I haven't thrown it out the window. I'm not saying it hasn't come out at £90. I'm not saying, oh no, not a hope in hell. But I am saying, it's just pushing it a little bit. Now this is where we start playing the what if game. For example, let me just show you here. What if we made that a 40-minute appointment? Look, it's gone down to 41. Let me just show you again. 45, £46.50. Take it down to a 40 appointment, and it's now 41. It's knocked a £5 off that price. Actually, let's just leave that there for the moment. See what other changes we can make. Maybe 7 stylists isn't enough for me to be making 50,000 profit. Let's just put an extra part-timer in there. Now, before you think, wait a minute, what about the wages? Our wages are a percentage, remember. So we've already got the pot to pay these guys. Now let's look at our total other costs. Right, well, you know what? I'm not going to change this purely and simply because I think after the recession we've just been through, my guess is probably most of you have got this buttoned down pretty well now. And if you haven't, you should have done by now. My worry here is that sometimes we start making reductions on things that actually make us money. So be careful of that. Of course you need to be in control of this, but make sure you're not cutting back on things that you need to develop your business, marketing, etc. All right, what else can we change then if we're not going to change that? What about these little fellas? We've already said that they are perhaps the key numbers. What if we take this 54? Okay, let's be really sensible here. Let's just take it back to 53. And this one I think could do some work. Let's take it back to 12. So, we're playing the what if game. What if my wage percentage was 53 instead of 54? What if my stock percentage was 12 instead of 14? What if I had 7.5 stylists? And what if I had a 40-minute appointment time? £35. Interesting. That's starting to look a lot better. I'm not happy with that 40-minute appointment time, you might be thinking though. Let's go back here. Wait a minute. Let's go back up to the top here. This is how you play the game. You just keep changing things on the calculator. It does it all for you. What if we actually take that back to 52? Maybe I needed to be a little bit smarter there. We did pluck that 50,000 out of the air. I mean, I could reduce it to 40. Wow. I'm now back down in the region of 36, which I'm happy with. My average cut and blow dry price being £36. What I know now, that if I've got 7.5 stylists and they are operating at peak level, then this salon can give me 50,000 profit. Oh, hang on, wait a minute. I changed it, didn't I, to 40. You know what? At the moment, I'm happy with 40. It is over and above my salary, remember. That's already in here. And that's it. That's how you play the what if game. This calculator is invaluable. By the way, we also talked about pricing. So for example, now we've worked all that out, what's a 90-minute appointment? 72. What's a 2-hour appointment? 96. What's a 30-minute appointment? 24. You've now got all the information you need because quite simply you know where you're going. The key to this whole process is quite simple. If you know where you're going, by deciding how much profit you want, entering it into the calculator, and the calculator giving you your target, your focus, because we've now got that number, we can drill right the way down. The great thing about this is it means every decision you're making is based on knowing exactly what you have to achieve. You can set stylist targets. You've got your own weekly target for the business, etc. You've got budgets, targets, pricing, staffing levels. It's all here, all from this one calculator. There we go. It's the Salon Focus Calculator. Okay, we're nearly there with video 2, and I hope you found it worthwhile. So, in a few days' time, you're going to have video 3 landing in your inbox. However, let me tell you a little bit about what we're going to be covering. Obviously, we're going to be starting to move into steps 2 and 3. Now, we've started to touch on step 2 by telling you a little bit about the salon drivers, but we're going to focus on those much more, and I'm going to show you exactly how to make them work for you. And then, of course, we're going to move to step 3, which is where I'm going to show you what to measure and how to measure to keep the focus and consistency. Now, I finished the last one by asking you to leave comments, and some of you left some great comments, but I know how many people are out there, and I know how many people are watching the videos, and I know there's still plenty of opportunity for some of you to leave comments. Please do. It really helps me to develop these programs by understanding exactly what you like, what you don't like, and how we can move this forward. But I also asked you to leave me that one little thing. What does success mean for you? I think this is really cool, and there's some great things that people are telling us. And it helps all of us to really focus and think, okay, what does success mean? You see, by me asking you to leave a comment on that question, you've got to think about it yourself. And of course, that really starts making you think about, what do I want this profit for? Why do I want my business to be more profitable? Remember, it's one of the key questions. So, do leave me a comment, please do. Like the video, assuming you like it, and then keep an eye out for the next video in your inbox in the next few days. Thanks a lot. Have fun, and remember, be fantastic.